Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Artenders with Mac and Dan. I am Dan, he is Mac.
What's up?
And this time we'll be discussing a movie, the suggestion of this movie, courtesy of our friend Shama.
Hello.
And so we're going to be discussing a movie called Bend It Like Beckham. It is a soccer-related movie that came out in 2002 with Parminder Nagra and Keira Knightley. Hopefully I pronounced those correctly, but
I think you mispronounced Keira Knightley.
I think so too.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, and Jonathan Rhys-Meyers.
Yeah, don't forget August Rush Dead.
Sorry. Anyways, I fumbled.
Failure. Dude, keep going.
It sounded normal to me.
Just keep going.
I've lost my
Wait,
confidence.
no.
This is the good stuff. This is it right here. Danny,
You can cut it out if it sounds
No,
bad.
don't. You can't. This is the podcast now. This is my favorite thing that could have happened. For anyone that's listening right now, no. Please don't stop.
Why did I have a question pressed?
Please.
He just put his hands on his knees, stared at the keyboard, and went, I fumbled.
So, Shama.
Yes.
So my very first question right off the
wrong
bat,
with
after
you?
watching this, nothing, Danny, it's fantastic. Sweet relief. So after I watched this movie, I thought to myself, so I'm wondering, why is this such an important movie to Shama? Because I asked you to come on the show, right? And you said, okay, so what do I pick? Because I figured, it'd only be appropriate for you to pick. And I think at first there was like this expectation of like, oh, okay, sure. So I'm gonna pick some artsy, like kind of pretentious thing, and we're just gonna talk about theory or whatever. And then, whenever I showed you the type of stuff we normally do, you were like, oh, it's gonna be Bend It Like Beckham, and I was like, okay, sure.
Well, it was
It
was when I saw that Sam had picked Brother Bear. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, cool. So got it.
Right.
This is the kind of
this
thing
is
that we're
what we're
going
doing.
for. Yeah.
So Brother Bear to Sam is what Brendan Beckham is to you.
A little bit. I mean, I don't have the same kind of nostalgia as Sam does to Brother Bear. I think I have a little bit of nostalgia with this movie, but like I watched it as a child, like when it came out, and I was like 5. But it was my sister's movie. My sister was a big soccer player.
Oh.
So it was like the whole soccer team came over and like watched it with my sister. And so I was just like around for it.
Uh-huh.
And it got replayed like a couple times throughout my childhood. But, it was more like replayed for my sister because everyone was like, my sister is like Jess.
Oh, okay.
And I didn't really...
Was she an athlete growing up?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, my sister was a huge soccer player. I was forced to play soccer, but I would never have called myself a soccer player.
You wouldn't have been Jess.
No. No. And so I watched it then again later, like probably my first year of college, and related to it a lot more, I guess. I don't know. It's wonderful, I think. It has a very, early 2000s feeling of
yeah.
It's early 2000s feminism, which is great and funny and
like so much of the movie is like feel good and like corny jokes.
Yes, and the soundtrack and everything is it feels very of the time.
Mm-hmm.
But what I love about it is it has this kind of undercurrent of social commentary that isn't they don't overplay their hand at all with it. I don't think it just kind of is. And so I think the older that I got and the more movies that I watched, the more I didn't realize I was kind of missing movies where like it just felt like you were watching your family.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I understand that.
And so, because I was like, I feel like a lot of movies about like immigrant families do the thing where they're like, okay, like here's the old world, this is the new world. The kids struggle with the new world because they want to be part of the United States or they want to be part of London or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's this whole story. And this one I feel like is a little bit more than that. It goes a little further than that because it is kind of that, but it's also about the family and it's also the white family has the same problem.
Yeah.
And it's about the friendship. And so I felt like it was really like wonderfully nuanced. It was the first gay character I had ever seen on screen when I saw it as a kid, which was crazy. It was the first brown family like I really watched on screen, which was also crazy. And it was like a young Asian woman as the lead, which was also kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And it was the first thing, it was the first one I saw, and it was the only one of those things that I saw for a long time. And so it holds a special place in my heart.
So it was partially because So it was your sister's movie, and now looking back on it, you're like, oh, I think this was actually a much bigger part of my life than I realized.
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you said something as well about how the themes of the movie just are. Mm-hmm. They don't try hard, and they don't overplay their hand. What do you think that comes from?
So what do you mean? What do you mean?
Like, what would overplaying their hand have looked like, and how did they avoid it?
I guess here's what I mean is I think that like some of the stuff like the wedding and the brown aunties who are like have all of these like weird little like comments here and there. I feel like there is like a POV that you could put on top of it that's like, look how weird and quirky this family is. But I think probably because it's a brown director, like it like that's just how their family is and works.
And it's not like a commentary per se, like against them. It's just how things are.
It's just how things are.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and I really do think like a big part of it is like it's like okay, like yes, this Asian family is kind of down on their daughter about following her dreams, but the white family does the same thing, and I think the fact that they include that kind of balances it out a little bit.
Yeah. I that kind of pairs with my suspicion, which was like,
how do we tie this movie to like other people as well? Or
no. Specifically, like I think that the genius of this movie and why I think that they didn't overplay their hand and why they did a really good job of making social commentary in a super appropriate way.
Yeah.
Is because it was built into the characters and it built into the story. Like it wasn't like they went out of their way ever to make a statement because they didn't have to.
It was a really simple story.
Right.
It's extremely simple. I mean, and it's probably a story that you've seen a bunch of times.
Yeah, right. And the media for this like the coverage and the advertising for the movie, obviously I saw a lot of before I actually watched the movie. Because this was my first time. Mm-hmm. I've never seen this.
Oh, good.
I had never seen it. I had actually never heard of it until.
Well,
no. Okay,
you
so I had heard of it.
Sports movies.
Yes,
I've never seen it.
So I don't know. I don't know why I've never seen it. Maybe because because I've never been that into like soccer movies either.
Okay.
Was it a girls' movie?
Maybe, but I legitimately never heard of this movie. It wasn't like I heard of it and then chose not to watch it for the entirety of my life.
Because it also had a limited release in the United States. Like I think part of why it was released, I think I don't know, but it was released in the UK first.
Oh,
and because I have a bunch of family in the UK, I think that's also part of why they were all like, "Oh, it's the movie about Shanta. Like you guys need to watch this movie." But I don't know whether like it was a really popular thing here. At first, it ended up being, but
yeah.
But so
a little bit. Yeah,
I
hadn't heard of it until I remember you mentioning it like sometime a few years ago. I legitimately thought it was a Disney Channel original movie.
Right.
Just judging from the name,
it has the feeling of it.
The funny thing is, I genuinely thought it was a Disney movie until I looked it up after the fact because it's on Disney Plus, and so I was like, oh, okay, so it's a Disney movie, but it's not. It's just.
And then Keira Knightley calls Jess a female dog in Germany.
Right, and then I was like, oh, no. This is not a Disney movie. Yeah. But my suspicion, and interesting that you said that you thought it was a Disney movie, because I really, for a while, was like, okay, so I was setting myself up for, like, a kid's movie. Not just a kid's movie, but, like, a kid's movie.
Yes.
I was expecting this to be geared towards, like, maybe like 6 to 12. Yeah. Like that's the vibe I got.
Yeah.
But then I realized that wasn't age, that was the 2000s. Like it wasn't a kid's thing. That's what things looked like.
It was like there was a sense of like the seriousness in the themes, but in this sort of backdrop that was like absurd. As if like something very serious was happening, but like the movie was like cheaper by the dozen.
Right. And like but like every once in a while, and like you were saying, it wasn't as much that the movie had any seriousness to it necessarily. It was just that the characters took themselves seriously.
And that's a great way of putting it.
Was it like any goofiness or early 2000s ness? We need to make up a word for that. Is was in the direction, was in the writing.
And I thought that was to the movie's benefit too.
Yeah.
And like so at the beginning, I felt that the movie got better as it kept going. I was legitimately convinced at the beginning. I was like, man, this is just not a good movie. Like, now, mind you, I was laughing the whole time because it was just like one of those movies that I didn't feel that it was good, but it was great. It was awesome. It was everything I needed it to be.
Like a hate watch or like a...
Not even a hate watch, but it was like, it wasn't as bad as something like The Room, because how can anything be as bad as The Room?
Right.
I'm
right?
sorry, are you comparing my favorite movie in the world?
We're getting there.
Okay.
We're getting there. I'm not finished.
Was it like the Terminator?
Go on.
The Arnold Schwarzenegger movie where what's the one where he goes into the forest and...
You mean the Predator?
Predator, right.
Predator.
Was it like Predator?
There, actually, yes.
Yeah.
In a way
it
that...
was so campy and so bad.
Well, because
that, like,
it's
you're
absurd.
excited.
And it's the absurdity, right? That...
Yeah.
I think... I should rephrase. I shouldn't have compared... I'm going to take a step back. I should not have compared... Because I also had a stroke today. I'm sure everyone here remembered. But... I'm going to take a step back.
I'm glad that you've mentally accepted that we're going to keep it.
I had to.
Good.
Because how can I edit that? There's no point. But...
I'm not going to post it if you give me something that's without it.
I apologize for comparing this movie to The Room. I was only trying to compare the feeling that I had while watching The Room.
Yeah.
And that feeling was also similar to Predator, right? Because there is this sort of air of absurdity in this movie. It's also the fact that in my head, this movie is called Bend It Like Beckham, and Perminda's character Jess has a shrine of David Beckham in her room. They say the words "Bend It Like Beckham" twice in the movie.
Yes.
Not just once, but twice. Nobody says, "Man, I wish I could bend it like Beckham." Nobody says that in a conversation. But I think, to the movie's credit, it, like, the writing got better, the stakes got higher, and because the main characters at least, Jess, Joe, and Jules, took themselves really seriously in those situations, as well as, I would say, like, Jess's family too.
Yeah.
Even though some scenes were still absurd, like Jess having the conversation with Pinky on the bed, and Jess is like, "Why do you love him?" And Pinky was like, "Because I do." And it's just like, okay, get over yourself. But this movie
whole
did
Pinky storyline is an interesting. It's a
Yeah.
cartoon. It's a cartoon.
It is a cartoon
Yeah.
that manages to be dramatic at the same time, and so by the end of the movie, it kind of pays off. But the journey to get there is still a really funny one. But I do have to acknowledge that there were some times that I was laughing because the movie was funny, but I was also laughing because the movie was dumb.
But I don't think it was trying not to be. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, I don't.
I think it aided the experience.
Yeah.
So, like, I think it's important to, like, recognize, okay, this movie wasn't the most sensical thing through and through, but, like, damn, I had a great time watching it.
Yeah.
Like, I seriously, right now, I wouldn't mind watching it again.
Yeah.
Because that experience was such a joyous one that I haven't had that experience from a movie in a while. And I know that, like, getting to that opinion was veiled in insults. I'm well aware. But all the same, I think this movie...
Really judgmental overtone? No.
But I still think this movie is really, really enjoyable.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I was just curious, like, in terms of star power, if they got Keira Knightley partially because she was famous at this point, and it
Doesn't look like it.
yeah, not really.
Yeah, I
She
think
was very young, and there's like a 10-year age difference between Keira Knightley and Perminda.
Yeah,
right.
And then Keira Knightley was in Pirates of the Caribbean the next year.
The next year.
Perminda, whenever she was in this movie, I think she was what, like 28, 29?
I think she was
Yeah, I
28.
think so.
And let me tell you, if I were to give a gold medal to a character or perhaps a director in this movie, I would give it to Perminda and her character Jess.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, okay. We'll get into that. But well, because I honestly
okay, that makes it sound like I didn't think she did a good job, and I did. Like, I thought she was great.
Well, because I felt that her character was, for the most part, written well the whole time, except for the few times that she would say "bend it like Beckham." But her character and, like, I think the arc that her character goes on and sort of what her character goes through was really fascinating to watch. And I think Perminda, in her acting performance, did a really good job. And so in those moments when I felt like, man, this movie is really, really absurd, she kind of like pulled me back in to like the actual story of the movie and what the movie was trying to say underneath it all. However, when I said that I would give a gold medal to Perminda, I wouldn't say there was some hesitance, but there was like, I guess, some shock in your statement,
I felt some
Shama.
shock.
Oh, well, no, I think she was great. And I do agree with you that her writing is like the writing of that character is the strongest. I think that the best actor in this movie by a long shot is her dad, though.
Oh, yeah.
So if I had to give then
What was that?
If I had to give it to him, then I would give it to him.
Hey, can you speak on that a little more? Like, what did you get from, I guess in particular his acting performance and the story of his character that propelled you into this direction of thoughts
Is that an overwhelming question?
It's only overwhelming because he used 50,000 words to ask.
Simply, I wasn't sure if you were ready, so I was just filibustering. I don't know if you picked up on that. I was just saying big words to just take
Slower and slower, waiting for her to pick up from you.
Well, because I was trying to read her face and she was like biting her lip, and I'm like,
Shama, what did you think of the dad if you were to say something about...
Is it my turn now?
Yes.
Yeah.
My turn now. Okay. Yeah. No. I mean, I just thought that it was such an interesting thing, right? Because he, I think, I would argue that his character has the biggest shift. Right?
Yeah.
Like, I think that, like, Jess's arc is the most interesting because, like, it's interesting, but things mostly happen to her.
Yeah,
You know?
like her POV doesn't
Like,
really
she doesn't,
change.
yeah,
that
like
much.
she gains the courage to like talk to her family, but I feel like the character whose opinion changes the most is the dad, and I think that he does a really lovely kind of very like realistic isn't a useful word to talk about,
But like
acting,
one
but,
that but
but
it
a
makes
very
sense.
grounded
Yeah.
way of moving through that. And I was just thinking about the scene when he goes, well, the scenes when he talks about being a footballer before.
You mean being a cricket player?
A soccer player.
We're talking about the dad, right?
Yeah.
Cricket player. He was a cricket player.
He was a cricket player. Okay, well.
Because then he plays cricket in the
Yeah,
end with
yeah.
Joe.
Yeah, and he played cricket in Nairobi. Okay, yes. So when he was talking about being a cricket player, I thought all of those little mini monologues were great. But the scene that I was thinking of that I particularly loved was the scene where he goes to watch her in the soccer game. It's the game where she gets in trouble because a girl
She
calls
pushes
her a patsy
another,
and she pushes
yes.
another girl.
And then she gets a red card.
Yeah, and then she gets a red card. And I was just thinking about that one because I was like, I got a whole story. And the camera wasn't on him very long. It was on him for probably, I don't know, 10 seconds of that whole scene.
Yeah, just in and out,
In and out, yeah. And I was like the fact that he was just standing there and like the rest of the dads were like, around him being normal. And they were like, are you going to sit down? Basically. And he was like, oh yeah, no, I'll sit down. And then then he's silently cheering her on and then pushing himself back. I was like, I wish that I could have just had that whole scene except just watched his face.
Yeah.
I'm with you there.
Yeah.
I'm with you there.
Like, I thought that whatever was going on with him for that scene was way more interesting than what was going on in the field. And what was going on in the field was, like, racial slurs and violence.
Yeah.
So I think that it's a pretty high compliment.
Also, let's just say really fast, she should not have gotten that red card. Like, the sports viewer in me, like, it's hard not to watch a sports movie now in my age and, like, actually look at the sport and, like, think to myself, I don't think there's any way she should have gotten that red card. And the fact that the manager wasn't doing anything, that Joe was just standing there, like, okay with it. Mind you, he wasn't. He confesses to that later. But the fact that it looked like he didn't give a care in the world, that one of his star players just got a red card?
Yeah.
Just for pushing somebody?
Let's admit it.
Yellow card?
Joe's
maybe.
kind of a dipshit.
Okay, yes, if there's a worst part of this movie, it's the
Joe.
part... It's not Joe as a whole,
I
but it's the part where they're standing there after that same scene, and he goes, of course I understand.
So,
I'm
like, where the
Irish."
hell were you, free coach?
That was really good.
Of course, Of course, I understand. I'm Irish is the worst line in this movie.
Oh my god, yeah.
Yes.
Because I mean, look, it's because I agree to give benefit of the doubt. Like, the English were also known for like eradicating Irish, but this is a very different thing.
Look, I'm not trying to minimize at all what the Irish have gone through.
Yeah.
I just think it's
apples and oranges.
It is a little bit apples and oranges, and I don't think that's necessarily. I just think it's a funny. I think it's too easy of a comparison to make on the part of the writing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It feels like we're desperate for a way for him to connect with her, and they are both outsiders. That is true.
Yeah, but we don't need to do that though. There's so many other ways to do it than that.
Like the experience is not
big time.
Inherently the same. Like, they may understand each other at a very base level, but just saying outright, I'm Irish, of course I understand, is like not the way.
It is the Disney Channel way.
It is the Disney Channel way. It is also the way to get out of the scene.
Yeah.
Which is precisely what that line was.
To happen. Yep.
Okay, real quick, we're going to talk more about Joe's dipshittery when we get back from a word from our sponsor. All right, if you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Now, just let me explain. First of all, it's free. Second of all, Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and a whole bunch more. And third, now this is really important, you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Hear me when I say no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. All right, and welcome back to the Artenders with Mac and Dan. So something we were talking about briefly in the break was the title of the movie.
We'll get to Joe's foolishness in a moment.
Yes. But most importantly, because that's just the thing that we're on right now, the focus that we're on right now, is the title of the movie. You said as you were typing it out, you said Bend It Like Beckham is an awful title.
It has next to nothing to do with, particularly with the main conflict of this movie.
It has so much to do. She says it twice.
She does say it twice. She does. And you know what? Tony says it too. I don't think he says Bend It Like Beckham.
Tony, our friend Tony?
Tony, our friend. No.
Oh, Tony in the movie. Sorry. I had forgotten there was a character named Tony.
He's Tony quite an important character.
Yeah, he does come in at pivotal scenes. I don't know why. I think it was just like the way I heard it. It was like, yeah, you know Tony, and just like you said it like that. I'm like, our friend Tony? Tony seen this movie? Yes, no, Tony does in this movie. Not our friend Tony.
Would love
Tony
this
does.
movie.
He does emerge at pivotal moments, which is strange to me because if I were to tell you that the most important characters in this movie, like Tony wouldn't really be on the list of people that I'm like, yeah, that's the big one.
He'd be in I would say second tier importance.
But I'm like, he drives her to the game. He convinces her to leave. He's a big part of the climax.
Yeah. That's some job security right there. You read that script, you say, they're not cutting me. They can't. Mm-hmm. Good for him.
But my point is about the name of this movie. I mean, still, it's like it doesn't... Because I find the main conflict in this movie, particularly with Jess and her family, and soccer is just the gateway to go past that, right? To break away.
The mechanism by which this conflict comes to light.
Right. So it is a soccer movie that isn't inherently about soccer, and there are a lot of sports movies like that. I think a great example is The Natural. The Natural is not a movie about baseball. The Natural is a movie about God that just happens to do with baseball.
But those are the best sports movies.
Yeah, sure, for sure.
I think those are all the sports
Remember
movies.
the Titans is not a football movie. It's a movie about racial injustice through the lens of football.
Right.
I can't think of a single sports movie that's about sports.
Yeah.
You know what we need to make? A movie about racial injustice, but it's secretly about football.
Nice.
The opposite.
No. And so, because I hear the name of this movie, and hence go back to the first segment, I think it's a Disney Channel original movie. I think it's this
you
kid
still believe
movie.
that?
Well, no, I mean, just from the name.
Okay,
I'm saying just from the name.
Yeah.
If I hear that name. So I'm thinking Little Giants. Oh,
right.
Just something along The Sandlot, just things along those lines because the name is so silly.
Yeah.
And I understand that this movie has this campiness factor to it, but this movie also takes itself pretty seriously at times, and during those times, for the most part, I would say done pretty well here and there. There would be some moments that they would throw in a joke and just like, what the hell is this movie? But like the overall dramatic storytelling and the flow of it, pretty solid.
Yeah, I agree.
So when I hear the name Bend It Like Beckham, it's this sort of incongruity. It's this sort of jarringness to it. It is not a reflection of what the movie represents. And so just to use the examples that I just said, something like The Natural or something like Remember the Titans, like I think those are great names for movies, right? Because it isn't just about the sport, but it's also about what the characters are going through.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
So with The Natural, like it's not just about him being a natural at baseball. Actually no, that's really it. But there's something like enchanting about the movie called The Natural.
Sure.
Like there is something holy about that. And there's a lot of religious symbolism in that movie. And then with Remember the Titans, like it's not just about remembering that football team, but it's about remembering what that football team had to go through.
Sure.
So I just wish the name for this movie was beyond just the main character wants to bend it like Beckham, right? Like
I would say though that like I think Beckham plays a bigger part in this movie than you're giving it credit for, because
David Beckham was not in this movie.
No, but there's a shrine to him, and all of the moments that she has alone where she's completely herself are with the shrine of Beckham.
Yeah.
Like all the moments where she's revealing who
That's her
she
soliloquy,
is.
right?
Yeah. Like that's the equivalent. Are with this shrine of David Beckham. And so I feel that he plays a bigger role than we give it credit for.
Have you seen either of you, have you seen the cartoon show Hey Arnold?
Yeah.
There is a character in Hey Arnold named Helga. And the main character is Arnold. Helga, throughout the entirety of the series, hates Arnold's guts. I mean, just the greatest disposition you can ever see. More than Iago to Othello, right?
Okay.
Just hates him. Helga, in her own time, in her own home, actually doesn't hate Arnold at all. She has a quite literal shrine to Arnold. So when I was watching Bend It Like Beckham, it reminded me of the absurdity of that shrine that Helga had.
So you can never take it seriously.
I could never take the shrine of David Beckham seriously.
But I don't think you're supposed to. I'm like nobody's being like, you need to take this girl seriously as she talks to posters on her wall. Like that's what teenage girls do sometimes. And I don't think you're supposed to like take it seriously.
All right, who is yours?
I did not have one.
Liar.
But I did not. I did.
Was it Harry Potter?
Spill it!
No. Harry Potter did not go with the theme of my room at the time,
my
and so
gosh,
I
that's
did not
so
have
epic.
any posters of Harry Potter. My sister did
What was
have
the
a
theme of your room?
I had butterflies.
Nice.
Nice.
My sister had a life-size poster of Mia Hamm in her closet, though.
Wow.
And so I was thinking of that whenever they were like, she had a shrine, like she has a shrine to Beckham. I'd be like, yeah, like that was the inside of my sister's closet.
It's like a fat head,
essentially.
right?
Yeah. And I don't think like it's supposed to be something that you take seriously, but I think it's the moments where she reveals herself.
I guess for me, it was the moments in the movie where it took me out of it that I thought like the movie was going somewhere dramatically, and then.
Do you think though that I do think that like on-screen soliloquies out loud have kind of fallen out of vogue anyway?
Oh, I think that's
so
fair.
I don't know that lands very well now.
It's too easy for voiceover.
Yeah.
Like, why wouldn't you just voiceover? Why would you spend
well,
all
but
that time?
also it's one of those things too. Is just like show don't tell, right?
Right.
Like why have this soliloquy when you can just
I
keep
they're
having the
fast
character
visuals
go
to do
through
it.
these things.
And I think that it's a fair. I think it's a fair thing to point out that there's nothing that I learned from those soliloquies that was not already established in those very well written scenes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the big thing, I mean, if you just look at Shakespearean soliloquies, like the characters are getting to something and then they reach something at the end of the soliloquies, right? For the most part, I would say. And they're working through it with the audience, right? But I felt like the soliloquies in this movie, something new didn't happen, or like things didn't change by the end of these soliloquies.
Yeah, I get
it
you.
allowed us a window into the character's psyche, which is nice, but I guess I would have preferred that window just through the actions of those characters, as opposed to here it is. You know,
Yeah, I get you.
I would have just liked to experience that more.
Yes. Sorry. I was taken aback at apparently there's taglines. That's the thing on IMDb, and they're kind of dumb for Bend It Like Beckham. Anyway,
2002, baby.
freaking 2002. So this was gonna be my question to you two. So this movie is a little over an hour 50 in length, which. If it was a Disney Channel movie, is a little long, right?
That's. I mean, that was my first point of like, what is this a Disney Channel movie or
Yeah.
it can't be.
I did just remember that I watched an interview with Grinda Chadha where she talked about the title of the movie, and I think it's relevant.
Go
ahead, go
is
ahead.
the director of this movie.
Yes. And she talked about how they use Bend It Like Beckham because they talked about how girls sometimes need to, instead of being more like confrontational, they have to bend the rules to get what they want.
Oh, okay.
Instead of breaking the rules, they kind of like shift things a little bit. And so I thought that was relevant. I'm not saying that I
and
necessarily...
Bend It Like
I was about to say,
Beckham's a lot catchier than Bend It Like
I
Man.
like the thought process to get to that name. I still don't like the name.
Fair. That's fair.
Okay, so then what do you think the movie is about that we could name it better?
Well, I mean, as I said earlier, I couldn't name I couldn't name the movie right now. I'm sorry to be flimsy, wishy-washy, and just crumble in the moment, as I did at the beginning of this episode. But
Danny is having a day.
Yeah.
quite. But like I said, I would want the movie's title to reflect not only.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to reflect just the sport, right? And I think my issue with the movie's title, I mean, Shama just revealed something, and I mean, it also like shows my ignorance too, that the movie's title is not just about the sport, but just the first time that I heard this movie's title, and I would have a hard time imagining that there aren't a lot of people that don't share the same sort of thought process.
No, I get you.
when
Like
getting this title.
I didn't think, oh, like this is about girls bending the rules when I heard the name of the movie.
Yeah.
Like that's a thing that the director explained.
And
then
I
I'm
had
like,
no
okay,
idea
cool.
that like a big conflict of this movie is just, it's not like getting past family ties, but like just sort of becoming an adult and then learning to like work with your family and reach something together, as opposed to everything just being one-sided.
Yeah.
I just wish there was a name better reflecting that, because I just felt that there was a lot of absurdity in the name. We need to get to Joe.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just gonna say outright, out front, is Joe a good character in this movie?
Ooh.
What is
good.
by what? Yeah, by what?
What rubric?
Okay, so
Show your workings.
Okay. Well, because I also felt maybe this is coming from too. I didn't think Joe was the best coach.
Yeah.
I felt like, I mean, for obvious reasons, and we see it throughout the movie, he hits on his players too much.
That
I mean, he
seems to be the
shouldn't be
motivation.
to begin with.
Yeah. It seems to be the motivation.
That shouldn't be the case at all. Like, there's a clear conflict of interest, and he needs to quit ASAP, or needs to get fired ASAP.
For sure.
I was also foggy on how old Joe is. I wanted to know.
Yeah.
That's a good point. So that's a good point, because so even though excuse me, even though Paraminda Nagra is 18, her character is 18 in the movie. Jess is 18. The actress was 28. However, the character was 18, or we presume to be 18, right? And so legal, fine, but still, kind of. I mean, she's still a high schooler.
It's iffy. It's a little.
Because I think this movie takes place in like the summer break in between.
That was the feeling that I
guess.
got. Yeah.
Even though she was just accepted into university, I don't really understand how the inner workings of the school system.
Maybe it was a gap year.
Maybe.
I was assuming gap year as well.
Yeah, because it seemed like the rest of the girls on the team were like adults.
Yeah.
It did, like, that was
Yeah.
the impression that I got. Also, fun fact that I think a lot of the players that they had cast were like soccer players. Like, they
Yes.
didn't cast
I
actors.
was- read that as well.
Yeah.
The very, very, very few times in sports movies am I watching it like the actual playing of the sport and thinking to myself, that actually looks really solid. That looks really good, especially early 2000 sports movies. They all look trash. But specifically all the B-roll they got with Parminda Nagra and Keira Knightley was really legit. I was
Yeah,
like,
it looked great.
oh, you guys actually look like really good
And
soccer
I
players.
thought like the cutting and the cinematography, for the most part, either in the practices or in the games, like I felt like just gave us enough, right?
Yeah.
Like, of course, there's always going to be times like as a sports fan, I'm going to want to see just more of the sport because I just like watching.
Right.
But like I was able, I was able to still enjoy like the amount that they put in and the stylistic approach of how they were presenting it in the movie. And it didn't feel like I was losing any of the sport per se, but I was getting enough and I was like, this looks good. I kind of understand what's happening and this is a great way to montage these sort of events.
Yeah. The other thing that I think is very important to note is that this is like one of your favorite movies of childhood, and you don't even really like sports all that much.
No, I have no interest in sports really at all.
So the movies must have done something.
Yes.
So let's say this. Let's say that producers come in. You guys are the writers of the movie or whatever. Producers come in. They say, okay, we need Joe to be more likable. And you're like, okay, well, we don't really, I mean, like, we're, like, today is the day of the shoot. We don't really have any time to rewrite anything. So we'll just cut stuff. We'll just cut things from Joe. What's the thing that you cut to make Joe more likable?
Jonathan Rhys-Meyers is just too seductive.
Yeah, he's too
So you're
sexy.
saying
He's
you
too hot.
recast?
He is too hot.
He's
You just
really sexy.
recast?
It's
I'm not
hard.
gonna lie. I am comfortable in my heterosexuality. But if Jonathan Rhys-Meyers at that age came in and was like, "Let's do it," and I'd say yes.
Yeah.
I would say yes. Dude is a god.
There's nothing that he does that isn't sensual,
Yeah, that's fair.
and so it's hard to...
So it would have been recast.
Well, no, because the thing is, I'm like, I don't know that you need him to be more likable, because I think he's very likable. I think you need him to be, like, less problematic.
And like more pragmatic
Like-
and more practical.
Like, I don't know. So, frankly,
There was
like,
also
if
the scene where he was looking through the window, and I'm like, that's kind of weird. He was looking through the window at like I guess the pre-wedding celebration.
Yeah, really. Okay, here's what I think.
engagement party.
I think that to make Joe better, the romance just has to happen later. Like the massaging of her foot and the like being like it's okay about the scar on her leg and all of that. Like that stuff just needs to be less sensual. And so there needs to be a way for that to be a thing that he is doing as a coach that he like either does to other players as well.
Yeah.
Or like something. I think the romance is like part of the story, fine, but it just needs to happen later.
I think also, like, I think his character should have been tougher at the beginning. Because can you imagine, like, because I was just thinking it from my point of view. If I was heading a practice, and one of the newer players on the team, for some reason, wasn't participating in the practice and is just sitting in the stands, I would be livid. You're wasting my time like this? I thought you came here because you wanted to play, and now you're sitting on the stands? Go home. Don't show up again. And mind you, I wouldn't expect, because you need the story to progress, I wouldn't expect him to go that hard. But, like, he wasn't upset, period.
Yeah,
he was understanding.
I'm like him making her run laps, him yelling at her in the locker room. Like I needed more of that.
Yeah,
because I'm like, okay, this is what coaches do. Coaches should do this.
Yeah.
To my understanding, I have no practical experience to back this up.
There's got to be a balance of like supporting your players, but also like discipline.
Well, also, like, no matter what you do, there has to be a very clear reason behind it or knowledge behind it. That was very clearly not there with Jonathan Rhys-Meyers. Like, you could tell it was so embarrassing. That was the one part of, like, the sports element of the movie where I was like, okay, you're an actor playing a coach. You clearly have no idea what's going on right now. I never felt like you actually.
It's also
and I think it's like I think that's part of everybody in the team being professional soccer players is like I'm like okay, all the players are clearly better at this than you.
Yeah, right. Right.
And the stakes of the situation too, because this isn't his end goal to be a coach of this team. Like he wants to move up, and so the stakes of that while he's coaching was not there. Period.
I would agree with that 100%. Yeah.
That I never felt the drive of him as a coach to not know, like, because I felt the drive of him wanting the team to do well, but I never felt the drive of him pushing beyond that. Like, I never saw or felt that objective period throughout the entirety of the movie. And I would feel like that's really important to him, especially since, like, he can't play soccer again. So that's gotta be huge for him, right? And he even talks about in the movie that he doesn't even talk to his dad, and partially because right now at this moment he is coaching a women's team.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big reason why he hasn't received closure on that relationship. So one would assume that he would have a bigger drive to go beyond just this team, and that wasn't shown in this movie at all. And that's one of the bigger disappointing things that I felt with this character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, sweet. So,
We agree with Joe.
yeah. So, I guess here's my next question. I'm wondering what is your steal and what is your cut? Meaning, what is something that you are potentially going to steal in the future, and like what you make eventually, like the art that you make, writing and directing or whatever, acting. What is something from this movie that you feel like you would potentially steal and use in the future, and what is something where you're like, that should not have been in the movie. They should have gotten rid of that.
I thought a lot of the familial relationships in this movie was well done, and for the most part, like, it had the right amount of seriousness and stakes in the situation, as well as like being a comedy and sort of like sprinkling it with absurdity. Like Jules's mother accusing both her daughter and Jess of being lesbians, and the Jess's family not understanding.
That's my favorite one in the whole movie.
Like, she's lesbian? I thought she was a Pisces, right?
Yeah.
Or like, just like things along those lines, right? So there were moments like that throughout the movie. I was like, oh, this is great, you know?
Yeah, right.
And it's just like funny little moments, but also the sort of tug, like push and pull relationship of Jess and her parents. Like, fundamentally, that relationship felt like a very real one.
I agree.
And so, like, I could also see very much so parents being like, you're so selfish, I can't believe you, this, like, you should be doing this for us. And it's just like, like parents are so capable of doing that, like accusing their children of being selfish when they themselves are extremely selfish. And that's not so much a judgment statement, that's just like fact of the matter, right? So I really enjoyed a lot of this movie's familial relationships, and those were, for the most part, the scenes that I enjoyed the most. Even though a lot of them were the same, which was a shame, because they were always, oh, Jess got caught doing the thing again. You're in big trouble, Jess. I can't believe you. And that scene happened like 5 times. And that's like the only disappointing thing in that sort of like arc of the story.
Yeah.
And so it felt like the change of the dad's point of view at the end was pretty sudden, it felt like, because it felt like his mind just changed suddenly, even though there were pieces of that throughout the movie, but I didn't feel like those pieces were big enough, nor did we see that in the father big enough. But still, to the point, I thought just the inherent relationships between the daughter and the parents was a very well done one, and that's something that I would like more movies to take from. What about either of you? Is there anything in particular that you would...
First deal?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. My favorite scene in the movie is the little clip right after they win the game. And Gerda Tata, she does this, she has a scene like this in Blinded by the Light, too, that just kind of, like, gets me every time. It makes me kind of emotional, where, like, she does such a great job of, like, marrying cultures. And so the scene right after they have won their big game and all the girls are in the locker room helping her put her sari back on.
I do. Oh, thank you for saying that. I forgot that scene.
Okay.
I love that scene.
And it like makes me like emotional. And it's this scene in Blinded by the Light where like he walks into like the Asian dance club but is playing his Springsteen. And it's like these moments where she is able to like marry the two cultures in such a tender way.
Yes.
And it feels so lovingly crafted, and there's like the girls are like doing goofy dances and stuff, and it's like there's clear misunderstanding, but it's so loving.
Yes. Yes.
And I wish that every movie had moments like that. Like it makes it kind of emotional.
And
like,
it was
I
a very
really love it.
also clear sort of presentation of the relationship between Jess and Jules and the rest of the soccer team that we didn't get a lot of that through the movie, but we got just enough throughout it to get that payoff in that one scene.
Yeah. I mean, and it was like there's a culture gap, but we love you so much that we're trying.
And like and so that it all comes from love.
Yeah.
And so it makes for just a very sweet and fun scene.
Yeah. Which I guess maybe is my statement on the whole movie of like I feel that all of the humor in this movie comes from such a gentle place.
Yeah.
From such a compassionate, such a loving place that I think maybe that is the larger thing that is so wonderful.
So a big part of the draw of this movie for you specifically, you're talking about that it was also like one of the very first times that you ever saw a movie about a brown family with an Asian lead. I'm wondering, do you think that that's a part of it, like the fact that it is not only a movie that you can relate to because it like marries the two cultures that you feel the most tied to, but also that it does it in a specifically loving way?
Oh,
is
absolutely.
It that?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay, that's interesting.
So.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So that is something that you would like to take forward, is like, if I ever try to even touch culture in any sort of way whatsoever in the future, I want it to be from that place.
Yeah.
That's sick. That's super cool.
What about you? What's your steal?
My steal, I actually really like the idea of soliloquies, not necessarily the way that they did it, but I totally forgot that was on limits. Does that make any sense? Like that was still a tool that could be used.
Oh, right. Because you don't see that in movies.
It's
in movies
so
in particular,
rare.
yeah.
And I know there are reasons for that, but I'm wondering if there's a way in which we
could do it and do it well.
Yeah, if it's the idea of a soliloquy as a whole, or if like there's
doesn't need to be done through VO or like.
Well, I feel like I feel like VO specifically. I mean, I feel like that's just not soliloquy anymore.
Yeah,
I think it's just VO.
It's just narration,
right?
Yeah.
But I'm wondering if there is a way to use soliloquy that like there's not another way other than that. Like you need it like that.
Because I think fundamentally, like to watch a character go through something and like think through something, is a very enjoyable thing to watch. I think my issue with the soliloquies in this movie is that like the characters didn't really go anywhere.
Right.
Sure.
Right. Yeah, but like there's. I think what's so interesting about soliloquies, or what's always been so interesting about soliloquies for me, isn't as much the mental journey that they have to go on, like in between like their scenes with the characters, whatever. It's more that there's something about saying it out loud. There's something about saying the thing out loud that that not only for the actor, but like for the person, for the character, that I think is really important and does something different than just acting on it, or us watching the thought process take place, but the actual physical speaking of it. Maybe that's like you were saying, you watch them go through the thought process for the most part, and then they come to like one line that they say out loud or something, or maybe it's VO, and then at the very end they say it. I think they might do that in like not Deadpool, something dumb like that, but where like most of it's VO, and then they're like, oh, this is it. Yeah. Or like, oh, I understand now. Or oh, out loud.
Because the discovery, a character reaching a discovery is a very rich moment.
Yeah, yeah.
Because, and then it's like sometimes like the audience member reaches that discovery with the character. So then it feels like you're on that journey.
That there's like the like ideological arc of the scene, and there's the mental arc of the scene, but then there's also the physical arc, which is they go from mental VO to saying it out loud.
Yeah.
Or like feeling so pushed to do the thing or inspired that they have to say it out loud.
Yeah.
I think there's something cool about that I have not seen recently. What is a cut?
A cut?
Yeah. You're like, man, this movie would have been a lot better without this.
I think. Oh gosh, you really threw it to me, and I wasn't really sure. So, but I'm gonna say, I'm gonna lay down and really confront with the fact that I just didn't like Jonathan Rhys-Meyer's interpretation
Oh my God.
of the character Joe.
Joe again.
Well, because out
Joe.
the gate, it's just like he's too nice. And then he was just too nice throughout the whole movie, but then also like when he was tough as a coach, I'm just like, yeah, but you're just being a bad coach right now. Like I understand, like you don't want your player to get a red card, but like you should have been livid. Like, are you kidding me? Like, oh my God, like your player just got a racial slur thrown at them by the opposing team and then got a red card just for pushing the other player. I would have that ref's plate. Have that ref's head on a plate.
Oh, I would take their plate and I would just have it. I would just have that plate of theirs.
And then he goes to kiss her later. It's and there's just such a
right.
clear conflict of
Right.
interest.
And there's a part of me that's like, oh well, you know the time, and I'm like, no, it's 2003. That wasn't that long ago.
No.
You should have said something, and also it felt weird to me that Jess was then like, I don't know, not like get the fuck away from me a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like how she then was like, there was no skip or no beat after that experience where she was like, where the fuck were y'all? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that was that wasn't even a thought.
I think
That
there
seemed
needs
weird.
to be a character like Joe. I think Joe just needs to be different.
Yeah.
Would you make him like Slumpy? Oh, would you make him Nick from New Girl?
Is that with the guy
Jake
with
Johnson.
the beard? There we go.
Yeah, where he's like charming
isn't
and
he
he's
like
still clearly attractive.
Isn't he like
but,
an idiot though?
Sometimes he becomes more of an idiot the more the show goes on. But like where he's just kind of like you know. But he's way more of a sports guy. It's not as much that you're like banking on his sex appeal. It's more like he's just.
Well,
charming.
I mean, and I think that maybe like that would be the thing is I think that all like the whole love interest situation would be less creepy if he was just a charming person that she was attracted to.
Yeah, rather than
him seeming to pursue her.
Oh, I see.
You know what I mean?
See. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, I do get like it was, I guess, a little while ago, but you're right. Like, 2003 wasn't a million years ago, and like it's been a thing forever to like have female athletes like have issues with their coaches.
Yeah.
You know, so like maybe we shouldn't do more of that.
Right.
Would you cut that as well, or is there like another part of the movie?
I just the whole Pinky wedding storyline. I understand it's important, and I'm glad that we get like I'm really pumped when we actually get to the wedding.
Yeah.
But I just am bored by it because I'm like I'm not invested in Pinky as a character. Like I'm like I want I don't know. I want some kind of sisterly something.
Yeah.
Pinky felt so on the side, and also kind of like a plot device.
Yeah. I guess
Opposed to like,
I would have.
because I felt like the mom and dad were much more like characters, especially the dad.
Well, I mean, and I felt like they started to flesh her out when they were like they had like the thing with her and her fiance in the car and whatever, and it's like she's sneaking around too to do kind of what she wants, but. I just feel that
we
wasn't
get a look at
fleshed
that
out enough.
I think that actually hindered, though. I think that
Really?
like the starting to explore her character or starting to flesh her out is part of what made it worse for me
because
it
I was like, what else?
Yeah, you're exactly wasting my time at that point. Because you've started something that you're not going to finish clearly.
Yeah. Because I mean, I liked the actress. I liked and I liked the scenes that she was in. I guess.
Yeah.
I just like. I just didn't feel that her relationship with Jess or her relationship with her husband was fleshed out enough to really get me invested in that.
Yeah, because that was mine too. There was, and you're talking about it being a plot device. I think it would have like, there's a way in which it being a plot device isn't a bad thing. That her character doesn't have to be huge for you to still get the wedding.
I think for
you
me,
to still get the idea.
There's just a lot of screen time.
Right, that's what I mean.
For such a lack of a character.
Yeah,
Right.
it's like there were a lot of scenes where I was like, we could have spent this developing.
Like
some
Pinky,
more stuff.
like it felt like
Right.
she should have been more important.
Yeah.
As a character.
Or you can
She either needed to be way more important or way less important.
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Like there's a way in which you could have taken Pinky's character down a couple fucking notches, and then, but also have kept all of the reasons that you needed her in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
That you clearly needed the character when writing the outline.
Mac.
Yeah.
What are I know we were harping on this movie, particularly in this segment, a lot of it, but I would like your final thoughts on this film.
I always compare early 2000s movies to She's the Man with Amanda Bynes.
I'm gonna say right now that's not a good movie.
I'm gonna say right now this movie's better.
Oh yeah, yes, no,
Oh, yeah.
I had a good time watching this movie. The last time I watched She's the Man, I did not enjoy it.
But here's the thing, though. She's the Man is always what I used to represent, like,
This
style.
kid and teen early 2000s movies. Yeah, the style, exactly. So I'm excited, and I'm only going to recommend it because I think that this is more the style. This is more what it is.
This movie is very, very silly. I think for me, it's very easy to like look at the problems at this movie, but this movie also, it's weird because it does a good job of not taking itself seriously and also taking itself seriously at both the right moments and the wrong moments at the same time. It's very difficult to articulate because this movie is also, it's good and it's also not good. But regardless, I had such a, I know it makes no sense. You shake your head, Shama. I know, but I think it was just like how I view it is that I think this movie has a lot of problems, but I still had such a fun time watching it, and I couldn't help but laugh, not just at the jokes the movies make, the jokes that the movie would make, but also like sometimes like this movie is just absurd. It's just out there. But I had such a great time watching it that I would absolutely watch it again.
And clearly you would
Oh yeah,
recommend it.
yes, I would highly recommend this movie. I think it's a great movie. I think it's wonderful and loving and funny and great.
It is definitely all
Adjectives.
those things.
Yes.
I want to make it clear. It's definitely all. It is wonderful. It is fun and it is loving.
Yeah. And similar to what you were saying, the main thing being it is one of the most clever and heartfelt ways that I've seen, like you're saying, the merging of cultures.
Yeah.
That was a really, really cool take.
And it frustrates me because I don't feel like, or at least I haven't been exposed to a lot of movies that have to do with, in particular, South Asian families.
Yeah.
And so I thought this movie, or at least I felt, I mean, I don't know, but I felt like this movie did a very good job of like showing that and showing like an appreciation for that too.
Yeah.
And I wish there were more movies that was centered around that and like focused more on that culture.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mac.
Obviously, I agree with this.
Oh yes, of course.
Good.
Mac,
Uh,
what are we looking at next time?
Okay, so the thing that we're looking at for next week is an album.
Okay.
So we're listening to music, and that album is called Pony,
Bye.
Rex Orange County.
Okay.
So something that I've been super proud of so far is that most of the stuff we made, especially Ben Like Beckham, hasn't actually been reviewed before. Like if you look up Ben Like Beckham on YouTube, Apple Music, Spotify, no one's reviewing that shit. It's just us.
I mean, it was in 2002, so.
Nah, fair, but like really, barely. We were talking about this before the podcast. Barely any of the stuff we've reviewed so far has been reviewed by anyone else, and it makes sense why they haven't. But this one has been reviewed by quite a lot of people, and so I would really like to dip our toe in this pond because I think that it is worthwhile and it's something that we definitely haven't tried yet.
Awesome. Thank you, Shama, so much.
Oh,
Thank you a lot.
Thank
You
you so
rock.
much,
This is
Shama.
fantastic.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
And Mac, Go to hell.